Well, good evening. Well, yeah, it's afternoon. It's, I don't know, roughly 1:30, 2 o'clock here in Hawaii. And the weather is beautiful. It's nice and overcast. Got my puppy dog here with me and watching the birdie birds out in the yard. And I'm going to tell you a little story about one of my many car wrecks. Um, this one involved my 67 Camaro. And the craziest thing about my cars, all of them, I mean, uh, like the Camaros, um, my Buick, uh, my Galaxy. I ran 5 slots on that one for a while, but then I got a nice set of chrome Kragers for that. That car, that's a special place in my heart, that car. I did a lot of work to that car. And anyways, my Camaro, it was pretty much, you know, stock paint job. And it wasn't none of nothing, it wasn't, you know, an SS or anything like that. It was just a 67 Camaro that, when I got a hold of it, had a blown motor. I think it had a little 327 in it when I got it, and it was fried. Um, Life expectancy of those motors, were, if you took care of them, you may get about 150,000 out of them, and that's if you took care of them. But a lot of people didn't. A lot of people didn't change the oil on time. They didn't do tune-ups on time. They overheated. They go around a corner and there's a rock in the road and take out the oil pan. And instead of stopping, they continue to drive till the car stops. A lot of stupid things happened. You know. Anyways, so I got this 67 Camaro, and it was blue. I don't know if it wasn't any special color blue. It was just blue. And me, a kid, hey, uh, a junkyard at your disposal. What are you gonna do? Yeah. Well, I never did like the 454s. A lot of people did, and the 427s. They were around, but they were, those brought big money, so those were to sell, right? My personal choice for the Chevy engine was the 396. I mean, that has such a unique sound to it. You can hear them coming from a mile away, and they got so much power, you know. And anyways, I stuffed one of them into my Camaro. Um, I guess I found out years later, recently, on how, the Chevy came out with a 396 SS Camaro that was supposed to be just the one of the baddest cars on the road, which I can imagine they were, because that little Camaro, man, you know, it hooked it up. I mean, I had a poly track rear end in it, and traction bars. That was a big thing back then, and 50 series tires all the way around. Little 14s on that, and it would melt those tires. I had no problem leaving black marks on that thing. We didn't do like they do nowadays with the big smoky burnouts. It wasn't nothing like that. It was, you just stop and drop it into gear and hammer it. Leave, mark your territory, so to speak. Anyways, I'm going to town to a football game, and I come around the corner, and here's this motorhome in the road. Now, back in the early 70s, like that, these big motorhomes, man, they weren't fast. I mean, they were gas guzzlers, and they weren't very fast. And only the rich people could afford to drive them, because the price of gas was going crazy. And anyways, so I come around this corner, probably 70, 75, And here's this motorhome in the road. So, okay, I'll just whip around it. And this, I rolled out around it and made it about halfway through the motorhome and looked up, and here's a log truck coming right at me. Well, I instinct was, get the hell off the road. And they had these big cutouts for the motorhomes and stuff like that, trucks and trailers and stuff to pull off the road to let the traffic by. Well, there was one of those right there on the side. So I whipped into that, gonna let the truck go by and then scoot out in front of the motorhome and continue on my way. Well, I wasn't that lucky. I come terrorizing through that road, and right in the middle of it's a big old culvert. I think they were like 3 feet by 3 feet, for all the water to run off. So instead of it puddling up, it could run down that and underneath the road into the river. And I dropped my passenger side front tire into that. Now, mind you, when you're getting a car wreck, things kind of just go weird. It's like time stands still, speeds up, all at the same time. Anyways, what I do remember of this is I looked down and I could see the top of the motorhome. Now, I'm not sure if that was, but I swear to God, I could see the top of that motorhome through my windshield of my car. And I flipped completely over it, and I landed on the other side of the road, right on the bank where it drops down into the river. And I think it was my driver's side rear quarter panel that hit, and it caused me to flip over again and crash into the river. And somehow during all this craziness, I got a cut on my head someplace. I can't remember. It's been a long time. Somewhere's up in here. Anyways, and if you know anything about head wounds, they bleed terribly. Well, I didn't. I'm in the river. Like, I'm crawling out of the river. I don't really even realize I'm bleeding that bad. And the people who were in the motorhome, they got stopped and were coming down to get me, see if I was okay. The log truck driver, he stopped. He was coming to see if I was okay. He already called it in on the CB radio that, a car wreck and approximately. And anyway, so then the highway patrol shows up, and I'm not really, oh, I'm aware of what's going on, but my main concern is for my dog, right? His name was Muttley. So I start yelling for Muttley. And everybody thinks, because everybody up there, you got nicknames, for people, and and their nicknames are earned. They're not just given out. You earn their nickname. And anyway, so I start yelling for Muttley. They think it's another person that was in the car with me. So and the ambulance shows up, and everybody else shows up. Sheriff, Forest Service, everybody. They think there's somebody in the river that they need to rescue. And this is before search and rescue and all those guys, had their own little gimmick going on. Anyway, so Lord and behold, Grandpa hears about it on the police scanner, which we had one in our house all the time. Because, Grandpa was a deputy sheriff, and generally, if there was a car wreck, we had to go tow it off the road because there's nobody else around to tow it off the road. So anyways, he heard about it. So he gets in the tow truck, comes down. And I've been trying to tell all these people all this time, and they got my head all bandaged up, like a mummy, I got barely seeing out of one eye, and I'm telling them, man, I said, man, because they keep asking me, what's Muttley's real name? I said, it's Muttley, that, it's a dog, and they wouldn't listen to me. They thought, because of the head injury, that I was delusional or something. Anyways, it wasn't until Grandpa showed up that and told him that it was a dog. So then everybody calmed down. Yeah. And the ambulance tur- turned me over to Grandpa. Highway Patrol gave me a big old fat ticket, and driving without a license, reckless driving, um, a lot of things, you know, weren't at they weren't that big a deal. I mean, now they make a big deal out of it, but it wasn't a big deal. I mean, if it wasn't for that damn concrete culvert, I would have been just fine. But it was there. I hit it. End up with a interesting scar for a while over that. And anyways, I get back home. We got the car in tow, and um, I don't know, 4 or 5 days later, maybe I go out to do something, and here's Muttley dragging his ass up down the driveway. Fucking dog made it home. Had to have been 10 miles from where we crashed. So I snatched him up. He stunk pretty bad. A lot of the cuts and stuff like that were all infected. A few of them had maggots in them. And so I take Muttley to the vet. It cost me a couple $100, but they patched him up. After about a week or so, he was getting around, no problem. But he'd never get in the car with me again after that. Nope, you couldn't. You couldn't bribe him with a T-bone steak to get in the car with me. He'd get in the car with Grandpa, but he wouldn't get in the car with me if I was behind the wheel. So, anyways, long story short, I totaled out that car. Some people would argue that by looking at the car, the front end was stuffed into the passenger side compartment. The rear end, where I landed on, was smashed all the way up to the driver's side door. The car was almost in a U shape from it all. And to look at the car, you would have thought whoever driving that thing had to have died. There ain't no way they could have lived through that. But, anyways, so I reused that 396, by the way. I put it in something else. And I used to use that rear end. I destroyed 2 of the 5 slot wheels, and I had GT qualifiers on all the way around on it. That was my wheel of choice. And all 4 GT qualifiers I put on a different car. They held air, no problem. I had the driver's side front one, which was a 50-14, and I had one of the rears, which was another 50-14. Because that's the way I drove. That's what I liked on my cars. I liked all the tires, fat tires on the front, fat tires on the back. I like them to fill the wheel well, and I was like, I'd like run 235s maybe on the front and 255s on the back, just the rubber to give it the stance. Anyway, so all 4 GT qualifiers survived. 2 of the 5 slots survived. I pulled a motor tranny and rear end out of it, and then put it in the back in the wrecking yard. It still had a good front fender and door, maybe. I don't remember. Anyways, that's that's kind of the life I lived back in the day. Get a junk car, build it up, a lot more horsepower than it should have had, and I didn't wreck them all, like I never wrecked my Galaxy, never wrecked my GS, you know. Um, Janelle took care of the Super B for me. Yeah, that's another story right there. All the other miscellaneous cars that I had. But there's a lot of cars that I didn't really give a lot about, care a lot about, that, because, like, I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier, you know, people would just take their big cars because of the gas situation. Um, and they'd just take them to the dump and put the title on the dashboard and underneath a rock and leave them the keys in them. They'd take the battery and the gas mostly, you know, and then, we'd go down there and, hey, there's a free car. We always carried the extra battery and, gas can with us. So we'd gas it up enough to get it home and decide what we want to do with it, the big old Cadillacs and, the big Buicks, big Oldsmobiles, big Chevrolets, all those, if they had the big blocks in them, man, nobody wanted them because gas guzzlers, and I wanted them. Anyways, I'm getting kind of sidetracked there, but yeah. So, anyways, there was a lot of I did a lot of that. I mean, I'd get a car that was cool, good looking, and I'd take the biggest motor I could find, stick it in there because that's what you do when you're a kid. You want to go fast, but you want to look cool while you do it. So you didn't take these junky things and fix them up. Like I don't know, it was a big Dodge car, huge, had the big 440 in it, and we drove it to town, and we didn't know it, but they're having a demolition derby at the time, and we didn't, back then demolition derbies weren't like today. The only requirements was it couldn't have any glass. So you had to take the headlights out, knock the windows out, and you could roll the windows down in the door. So if they got broke, the door contained the glass, but you had to remove the back window and the front window. And so we took the headlights out of it, took the taillights out of it, threw everything in the trunk, busted the windshield out, put it in the trunk, busted the rear window out, put it in the trunk, rolled down all the windows on it because it's a big 4-door boat. And we went and ran it through the demolition derby. We got second place in that car. And then we drove it home. Yeah, that was crazy. But that's just kind of the kind of cars you find down at the dump. They're just big old, at the time, they were new cream of the crop. Somebody paid good money for that car. But, then 10 years later, they're gas guzzler. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this story. If you want to hear more, subscribe, like, tell your friends. I'm just getting started on this, so we're still in the beginning stages, but I got a lot of stories to tell. So I hope you enjoy this and have a good day, and God bless you.